3 scary, true stories of being followed home. The man in the parking lot.
I was 23 when this happened, working the late night shift at a grocery store to make ends meet. It was a Tuesday night, just after midnight, and the store was practically dead when I clocked out. The parking lot stretched out like a dark, empty desert, quiet, still, with only a few lights flickering overhead. The second I stepped outside, I noticed there was only one other car parked way in the back, a dark-colored SUV. It wasn't there when I arrived for my shift. I thought it was odd, but brushed it off and started walking quickly toward my little sedan. As I dug through my purse for my keys, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The SUV's headlights flickered on. I couldn't see anyone inside, but the timing was too perfect. My hands started to shake as I unlocked my car and climbed in. The moment I pulled out of the lot, I glanced in my mirror. The SUV started rolling too, keeping distance but clearly trailing me. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, but every turn I made, it followed. When I slowed down, so did it. When I sped up, it matched my speed. The fear really set in when I deliberately drove past my street to test it, and sure enough, the SUV followed. My chest tightened, my palms slick with sweat on the steering wheel. I decided to pull into a brightly lit gas station, hoping the cameras and people inside would make whoever it was back off. I parked near the door, heart hammering, and sprinted inside. Through the glass, I could see the SUV parked at the far end of the lot, just idling. The driver never got out, never moved, just sat there with the engine running. I begged the cashier to call the police, but by the time an officer arrived 15 minutes later, the SUV had already driven off. The officer told me I was smart not to drive straight home, that whoever it was might have been waiting to find out where I lived. To this day, I still wonder what their intentions were, and I can't help but think, if I had gone straight home, I might not even be here telling this story.
The shadows by the train station. This happened when I was 19. I was living in a small town, taking the train back and forth to college every day. My house was only about a mile from the station, so I usually walked. I never thought much of it, even at night, until one winter evening that I'll never forget. It was bitterly cold, the kind of night where the streets are empty because nobody wants to be outside. I was bundled in my coat, headphones in, when I noticed something off. I could hear footsteps behind me, heavy ones. At first, I assumed someone else had gotten off the same train and was heading in the same direction. But when I glanced over my shoulder, I saw a tall figure in a hood, walking with their head down. I picked up my pace. The footsteps picked up too. I slowed down. They slowed down. It became obvious. They were following me. I yanked my headphones out, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The closer I got to my neighborhood, the faster his steps became. The sound of boots striking the pavement grew louder, closer, echoing in the empty streets. By the time I turned onto my block, I was practically jogging. That's when I heard it. His footsteps break into a sprint. I didn't even look back. I bolted to my front yard, fumbling with my keys in sheer panic. I could feel him closing in behind me. I finally managed to throw the door open and slam it shut, just as his shadow stretched across the front steps. My breathing was ragged as I pressed my back against the door, shaking. Through the peephole, I saw him standing there at the edge of my driveway. He wasn't moving. He was just watching. After what felt like forever, he slowly turned around and disappeared into the night. I barely slept. The next morning, I reported it, but the police said unless I had a clear description, there was nothing they could do. For weeks, I was terrified to even leave the house. And to this day, I've never walked home from the station again. The silent follower.
This happened 2 years ago after a friend's birthday party. I had a rideshare drop me off near my house, but because of road construction, I had to walk about a block down a dimly lit street. It was around 1 a.m. and I was completely alone. At least I thought I was. Halfway down the block, I noticed someone on the opposite sidewalk. They weren't walking normally. They were just sort of keeping pace with me, step for step. I tried not to panic, thinking maybe they just happened to be going the same way. But then I crossed the street, and so did they. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. I walked faster, they did too. I finally glanced over, and my blood ran cold. The person was wearing a plain white mask, no features, no expression, just a smooth, blank face staring in my direction. By then, I was nearly sprinting toward my house, my keys clenched so tightly in my fist that they cut into my skin. I reached my front door, shoved it open and slammed it behind me, barely catching my breath. When I gathered the courage to peek through my upstairs window, I saw them. The masked figure was standing directly across the street, head tilted slightly upward, staring right at my window. They didn't move, they didn't make a sound, they just stood there, like a statue. For almost half an hour, I watched in paralyzed fear as they didn't budge an inch. And then, as suddenly as they had appeared, they turned and disappeared down the street. I never saw them again. But for weeks afterward, I felt uneasy every time I stepped outside, like whoever it was might come back. Or worse, like they now knew exactly where I lived.